Hello and welcome, this is Kendra, and in today's video I'm going to share how to assemble all 15 cards from the new quarterly card making challenge, Kendra's Card Challenge 17. If you're not familiar with my card making challenges, it's where you can create 15 cards using 6 sheets of 6" by 6" pattern paper. I provide a free PDF printable that has cutting templates that show you how to efficiently cut the pattern papers so that you have little to no scraps, and then you turn those pattern paper pieces into cards. Of course, you'll need other cardstock and supplies, but for this challenge you can create 15 American A2 size cards and have a chance to win a lot of prizes by sharing your cards throughout the quarter. This challenge runs from January 1st through March 31st of 2025, and there are 20 company prize sponsors this quarter with over $1,000 worth of prizes that will be given away throughout this challenge. In my challenge introduction video, I explain all of the details about how it works and how to enter. So I will have this video linked above and in the description box below. I highly encourage you to watch this video as the way to enter the challenge this quarter is different than in the past. So for my cards today, I'm using the soft blue florals with the Party Critters ephemera. I'm also going to be using the Card Cut Essentials die set 3 and 4. I'm going to be using the scallops and a few of the circles for some of the cards. And then I'll be using this half circle piece for some of the cards. You can get these at Pink and Main. Also, I'll be using the Simon Says Stamp Happy Birthday stamp here. This is brand new. I haven't used any of the others except for this one stamp, but I love that font. I'll be using this little Crafty Friends add-on stamp set from Altenew. I used the one that says Crafty Friends Stick Together. And then I also use this embossing folder. This is a 3D embossing folder called Floral Festoon, and it is beautiful and it matches the florals in that paper pad really well. I'm also using this embossing folder from Spellbinders. This is for May of 2024. And I believe it's called Lattice, but I will correct that if I'm wrong. I'm also using one of the sentiments from this Birthday Sentiments Foilables Cut-Ups pack from Pink and Main. And also this Thank You So Much sentiment from the Lawn Fawn Magic Messages stamp set. I use this a lot because these are designed to work in circles. And then I'm also using this Altenew Dotted Swirls Debossing Cover Die. So it makes these little designs in your background panel. And then I also bring in a couple of dies. This one says Create. It's got the word in shadow. And then this one is a smaller Hello die. It's got the word in shadow. I'll have to link where you can get these as well if they're still available down in the description box. But let's go ahead and start putting together the cards. Here is a quick look at the Party Critters ephemera from Not Too Shabby Shop that I'll be using for some of the cards. So how this works is that you would start by picking out 6 coordinating pattern papers for the 6 cutting templates and assign them to each of the color-coded papers A through F on the printable that I provide for free over on my Patreon page. The cutting templates are for 6x6 paper, and if you use double-sided paper, that's even better because you will have more options in case you don't like 2 of the patterns together. You can just use the other side. On the last page of the printable, you'll see there's a quick reference guide that shows which papers go together on each of the sketches so that it helps when assigning the papers. All of these patterns are either florals or geometric patterns, so I'm not going to really worry about assigning certain ones to go together since they all coordinate. But if you have any directional patterns, you'll want to assign those to papers B or C since the arrows all point the same way on the cutting guides. All of the other cutting guides have arrows pointing in different directions, so keep that in mind. So before you start cutting the papers, you'll want to grab some envelopes or sleeves or some other way to organize the pieces as you cut them. I like to use cellophane bags, and I number them for each of the 15 card sketches. There are circled numbers on each of the pieces on the printable, and this lets you know which card sketch that piece goes with. So off camera, I cut each of the papers according to the cutting guides. I have a video tutorial showing how to do this over on my Patreon page, and this can be accessed by official, all access, and VIP patrons as one of the membership benefits. So I cut the papers in layers and sorted them for each of the card sketches and figured out how I wanted to decorate each of the cards.
Now I'll show you how to assemble them and give you some tips along the way. I will have the card sketch up on the screen, and I have this video sped up 6 times to save on time. So if you'd like to see this process slower, you can always change the playback speed of your video in the YouTube settings. For card number 1, my back panel has been embossed using the Floral Festoon 3D embossing folder. The 2-inch square that's been cut in half has a 2 1/4 inch layer that was also cut in half. So when gluing the triangles onto the layers, you'll want to butt the long edge up against the long edge of the layer for both pieces, because the middle rectangle piece also has a layer and you want them to be consistent all the way around. For the middle rectangle piece, I used the same ivory cardstock that I used for my card base. And for the 2 1/4 inch strips that go on top of this piece, you can space these out however works best for whatever you plan to put in the middle. I'm using a wooden tag that says Happy Birthday. And since it has a hole in it, I'm tying a bow using a piece of aqua blue twine that matches the paper. And anytime you use a 3D embossing folder, you want to make sure that you add plenty of glue to whatever you're sticking it to, because you have raised edges. And because the back of the twine is making the left end raise up a little bit of my little sentiment banner there, I'm adding some foam tape to the back so that it will lay level on the card. And then this finishes off card number 1. For card number 2, this one has 2 long strips and 3 short ones, and a panel that measures 3 3/4 by 5 inches. You can just lay them out as shown on the sketch and glue them down, or you can weave them in and out. To make sure they are level, I'm using a T-ruler and I'm alternating how I'm gluing these down to make it look like they're weaved. So I'm trying to space these out with a 1/2 inch between each strip, since the strips are also 1/2 inch, and I think that kind of looks the best. I didn't measure this exactly, I just eyeballed it, but I'm using one of the sentiments from the ephemera pack and one of the smaller party critter images, one with the zebra on it. And to help these stand out more, I'm taking my Copic marker that matches the background panel and running it along the edge of both the image and the sentiment, and I also pop them up with some foam tape. And to finish off this card, I added 3 different sizes of ombre flat back pearls. That's hard to say. And they have both the green and blue on them, so it matches the paper really well. And this is card number 2. For card 3, I debossed the back panel with the Dotted Swirls debossing cover die from Altenew. Now this sketch is pretty straightforward, but I do want to mention that the skinny strip that goes across the bottom, when you glue that down, it will be unlevel. So if that bothers you, you can either cut some pieces of scrap cardstock and glue it to the back on the ends, or you can add some Collal 3D glue gel behind both ends. This glue helps to add dimension, and it's pretty quick and easy to use, squeezing it out of the syringe anyway. You just have to make sure that you put the lid on really good, or it can dry up on you and clog. It does take a while to dry, so if you do use this on a card, you'll want to make sure that you let it sit out to dry for at least 24 hours. For the scallop circle that goes on top of that strip, I added some regular glue behind the middle that will stick to the strip, and some 3D glue gel on both the top and the bottom to help make it level. And to finish off this card, I added 3 gold enamel dots on the sentiment. For card 4, I used the Spellbinders Lattice Work Embossing folder for the back panel. On this one, you'll want to try to place the 3/4 inch strip the same distance from the left edge as the distance from the pattern paper piece on the right edge. To cut out the circle pieces for this card, I used one of the stitch circles from the Card Cut Essentials die set number 3. It's just slightly smaller than 1.5 inches. And I glued down the top and bottom circles first, trying to make sure that they were the same distance from the edges, and then I centered the middle circle last. I used one of the ephemera pieces with the giraffe and the balloons, and since one of the balloons had Happy Birthday on it, I didn't need to add anything else. Another tip I want to mention is that if you're working with images that have eyes, one way to give your card some extra interest is to add some touch of gloss to the eyes to make them shiny. I forgot to do that on the first few cards, so I'll have to go back and do that. But to finish off this card, I added 3 gold enamel dots. And this is just too cute. I love these little party critters. So for card 5, this is one that has 2 pattern paper pieces that butt up against each other. I opted to go with one side with the geometric pattern, and then for the larger piece I'm using the floral side. Now if you don't like seeing the seam of where the 2 papers come together, you can always use some peel off stickers like I'm doing here. These are from Love from Lizzie, and I'm using a gold strip. I stamped the happy birthday sentiment from that Simon Says stamp set at the top of the tan rectangle piece. And this has a layer the same color as the layer behind the pattern papers. I added some foam tape to the back of this rectangle piece, and then I glued the ephemera piece with the cute little deer on top toward the bottom, and I added a mint green paper flower on the bottom right hand corner. And I adhered this using some of that 3D glue gel to finish it off, and I added a gold enamel heart next to the sentiment. And this is card number 5. Now for card 6, I cut a stitch square out of the layer piece since it will be covered up. Now this sketch has 2 rectangle pieces that should be lined up evenly with the layer along the top and the bottom. The 2 small rectangle pieces are to be glued down in the middle to look like they go all the way across, just like sketch number 1. And then the other pattern paper strip will go below that, but on top of the large square that was cut from the dark green cardstock for this card. For the center pattern paper square, I stamped the sentiment, "Crafty friends stick together," mainly because of the glue, and I just love that sentiment. But I stamped that in the middle, and then I adhered this to the stitch square piece that's cut from the same color as that, the bottom layer piece. And this was glued down to the larger square, but before it dried, I lifted up the layered square and I slid that pattern paper strip underneath. I almost forgot that part, but luckily I was able to somewhat center it before it dried. And I added some 3D glue gel behind the end pieces to help make them level. And I added another matching paper flower in the bottom right corner and a gold enamel dot to finish it off. For card 7, I used the bottom layer piece to cut out the word hello using the word and shadow die from Pink and Main. It will be covered up completely by the 3 pattern paper pieces that will be butted up against each other. Again, if you want to cover up the seams, you can. I'm using those same gold Love from Lizzie peel off stickers that I used before. Now I cut the stitched half circle out of the same white cardstock that I used for my card base using the Card Cut Essentials die set number 4 from Pink and Main. And after cutting it out, I added it to the same floral festoon embossing folder after I cut it out. And I used my reverse tweezers to hold the hello sentiment while I added glue to the back, and I placed it on the white shadow die cut. And to finish this off, I added 3 gold enamel dots, and this is card number 7. For card 8, I used a tan 4x5 1/4 inch bottom panel on a white card base, and I used the same tan for the rectangle piece that goes on the top. I stamped Happy Birthday from that same stamp set I used earlier. Now both the tan rectangle and the pattern paper piece were layered with the same dark teal cardstock. And to keep everything level, when gluing the pieces down, I added some scrap cardstock behind the tan rectangle piece. And I used one of the larger ephemera pieces for this card, one of the teddy bears. I added the small rectangle piece to the top left corner. I cut the fishtail banner out with my scissors, and then I added a mint green bow made from twine in the bottom right hand corner that I adhered with a glue dot. And this is card number 8. For card 9, I used another panel that was embossed with that same 3D embossing folder floral festoon for the back layer. Again, I made sure to add a lot of liquid glue to make sure that it sticks since a lot of the area is raised. I glued the pattern paper strip in the middle, and then I added 2 teal 1/4 inch strips on each side to give it a layered look. And for the focal point, I layered up 2 teal daisies that I've had in my stash for forever, and then I glued down a gold embellishment in the center. I had a mint embellishment that also matched, so I was having a hard time deciding which one I wanted to use. But because the centers of the flowers on the pattern paper were more like a tan or a gold look, I went with the gold one. I wasn't sure the liquid glue would hold it, so I added some 3D glue gel also to hold down the flower. I added a little bit too much. It squished out the sides, so I'm hoping it won't be that noticeable once it dries. And I figured I would add a sentiment to the inside later since this card is just so pretty like it is. For card 10, the large pattern paper piece covers the entire front of the card base. And I used dark green cardstock for the layer that the 2 triangle pieces go on. I wanted to use the geometric pattern for the triangles, so that's why my triangle pieces are the opposite of what's shown on the sketch. But that's the great thing about using double-sided paper. I placed a tan rectangle piece in the center, and I added a piece of ephemera for the sentiment and one of the smaller images on the bottom. This one has a cute little tiger. And I added touch of gloss to the eyes and nose, and then I added 3 large gold enamel dots along the top of the green piece as shown on the sketch to finish it off. So moving right along for card 11, I started out by auditioning my pieces on the card base to decide which sides of the pattern paper pieces I wanted to use. I finally decided to go with the geometric patterns. So I flipped all of the pieces over so that the floral patterns would show, and then I added some mint tape to tape the pieces together to line everything up before gluing it onto the card base. So if your pieces aren't lining up, just line up one side and then you can trim off the other side if you need to. Once I had all of these taped together and glued down, I realized that my pieces were just slightly too long for the card base. So I went ahead and glued down the colored cardstock strips, and then I end up trimming off the bottom after I let the glue dry for a little bit. Now for the focal point for this card, I stamped the thank you stamp from the Magic Messages stamp set from Lawn Fawn, and I stamped that onto the tan stitch circle from that I cut from the Card Cut Essentials die set number 3, and I layered it with the scallop circle also from that same die set. And then after trimming off the bottom, I glued the focal point down with some 3D foam tape. And I added, again, some gold enamel dots. And this is card 11. For card 12, this one has what looks like 3 long strips, but it's actually 6 pieces. And I used a T-ruler to help line these up. And again, I'm trying to space these out by 1/2 inch, and I'm gluing these directly onto the ivory card base. The bottom smaller rectangles need to be lined up with the top pieces. So if you don't have a ruler, use the side of a sheet of cardstock to help you line it up. The 2 colored cardstock strips should fit exactly between the top and the bottom strips. Now for this card, I used the Create Word and Shadow die for this card, and I cannot find where this came from. If you happen to have this die and you know where it came from, please let me know down in the comments. I have looked everywhere, but I've had it in my stash for a while. So I just glued that on top of those 2 strips there, and I added a paper flower. This is a simple yet beautiful card, card number 12. For card 13, this is our first landscape card. And this has a pattern paper piece in the back that measures 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and it's layered with a teal piece of cardstock. And for the middle rectangle piece, I used the same ivory colored cardstock as the card base. And this ivory piece was embossed with that same 3D embossing folder. Can't you tell I love that folder? And the angled pattern paper piece gets glued on top of this embossed piece in the middle, and I used the same Create Word and Shadow die that I glued on top of the pattern paper piece at an angle. And I decided to add some gold Love from Lizzie peel off stickers along the edges of that angled piece across the center, and then I added a gold enamel heart to finish this off. And this is card 13. Now for card 14, this one has a lot of stripes. There are 2 1/4-inch strips that go on the top and the bottom, and then there are 4 1/2-inch strips, 2 from 2 different patterns, and then there's a 1-inch strip across the middle. So you'll want to alternate these as shown on the sketch. And to help line these up properly, again, I'm using my T-ruler. I'm starting off with the top piece, and then I'm gluing down the bottom piece, and basically just alternating from top to bottom, working my way to the center. And this is to help me get the spacing right. Now these should go all the way across on your card base. So if any pieces are too long, you can always trim off one end. Somehow I was able to cut them exactly right, which never happens, so I'm pretty stoked about that. But I added one of the giraffe ephemera pieces to the center that I popped up with some foam tape, and I added a gold enamel heart and some touch of gloss to the eyes to finish this off. And this is another very cute, simple card. I just love that little giraffe. And now we are at the last card, number 15. This one has 2 pattern paper strips and 3 colored 1/4 inch strips. I started gluing the strips a 1/4 inch from the left edge, and I started working my way to the right. And I used the Card Cut Essentials die set number 4 to cut the stitched half circle that should be butted up to the far right strip. And I'm using one of the ephemera pieces with the cute little deer, and I popped him up with some foam tape, and I used one of the happy birthday sentiments from the Pink and Main Birthday Sentiments foilable cut-ups pack that I also popped up with some foam tape. And I added a gold enamel heart and some touch of gloss on the eyes to finish this off. And there you have it, all 15 cards for Kendra's Card Challenge 17. I absolutely love how these turned out. I really hope you like them too. Please let me know which card is your favorite down in the comments below. And I'd appreciate it if you'd give this video a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, I hope you'll consider subscribing. I really hope this video was helpful, and I hope you'll join in for Challenge 17. Not only will you get a great set of cards to help build your stash, but you'll also have a chance to win some wonderful prizes. I appreciate you watching this video. I can't wait to see what you create, and I hope to see you again soon. Have a wonderful day.